Oh, Lisa, you're going to get way too much of me this week. I don't know what you're doing here.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. People always kind of pop into this too, and like we were saying, Nora, I found out that a lot more people watch these on the recordings too, than actually show up sometimes. So to everybody who's watching this on the recording, thanks for tuning in, and I'm so excited to have you here.
Excited
Uh,
to be here.
yeah. Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know, I'm Andy Harwood. I'm co-owner of the Vaz+Harwood team. We have our director of operations, Nora, here with us. Andrina's an agent on our team, and Marjorie is our ISA on the Vaz+Harwood team. And we're so excited to have Mr. Jake Lures here with us today. Thank you so much for coming, Jake.
My pleasure. And Mr. Jake Lures is that's how I get uncomfortable, Andy.
You know why? You know why I say that? It's because Sherilyn trained me.
Did she?
That's
See
what
that makes sense. I can hear her saying that, Mr. Jake.
If she were here, she would be calling you Mr. Lures. You know, she'd do that if she knew you for 40 years. She would, so
It's all good.
She's rubbed off on me. Well, like I said in my Facebook post, we put out a request for, what kind of topics should we do? Because we were doing things that we thought were interesting or useful or whatever. And then somebody said, how about something on mindset? And I was like, oh, definitely. We should definitely do something on mindset. And then Nora and I were brainstorming that, and we're like, oh my God, Jake's like the mindset guy. Because every time I've heard you talk, which I don't know, we've known each other, probably 6 or 7 years now.
Yep.
It always kind of comes back to mindset. And you've had some great leadership sessions that I'll never forget. I'll never forget those team meetings at Lakes too, and that was always being talked about. So
you're set. I love to be. I like to set the expectations low, because then if it's average, it's awesome. But when you set them really high like this, Andy, it puts more pressure on me. So
yeah, the pressure's on, Jake. We're expecting huge things. All right, well, I'll just tee it up a little bit more. Before I got into real estate, I really thought, I don't know, I didn't read a lot of business books. I had a business at the time, but I kind of poo-pooed all that stuff. And mindset was certainly not on my radar. And when I went to Bold the first time, Bold, for anybody who doesn't know, is a Keller Williams mega training thing. It's pretty cool. And I think like the last slide at the time, it might be different now, but I don't know if they changed it or not. But the last slide, I remember it stuck in my head, was 90% of business is mindset. And that made a huge aha with me. And I'm like, I agree with that. And it's something I constantly am trying to improve. I struggle with. My mindset isn't always consistent. And so I'm really wondering kind of like how you started down that journey, that line of thinking, and how you use that in your coaching and leadership training.
I think some of the pressure we put on ourselves is we expect to have a good mindset all the time. And it's a completely unrealistic expectation. I think it puts more pressure on us to expect to always have a good mindset versus accepting what is. I've gotten to a place where I think we can all agree on any given day, something's going to go wrong. I believe that it's just naturally part of it, particularly in this business, or like running 5 market centers. On any given day, there's going to be plenty of stuff that goes wrong, plenty of people that aren't happy, plenty of transactions that went sideways. And so you can get into this downward spiral if you're not careful. I think one of the biggest challenges, Andy, I think what shows up is what hurts the mindset the most are the stories that we've created that actually haven't happened. And we create this story, all the stuff that could go wrong, or who's going to be upset with me, or if somebody leaves, are they going to judge me, or other people going to, and you've created this really heavy weight of something that most likely won't ever happen. And if it does, you probably won't even realize it happened. And I talk with agents about this, like if there's a little bit of a kink in a transaction, we go to, what if the deal falls apart? If the deal falls apart, my clients are going to be upset. If my clients are upset, they're probably not going to refer me. And we create this really, really intricate story. And our mind doesn't, the truth is our mind doesn't know the difference between reality and the story we're creating. So now all of a sudden we've put all this energy into all this stuff that hasn't happened yet. And then a day later, you negotiate it and you figure it out. And all that time and energy you spent worrying about the domino effect of a deal falling apart doesn't actually show up. So how productive was that fear in the moment? Now, do I still do it? You bet. There's no question. It's interesting sometimes to hear ourselves talk. You're like, huh. You start to process it differently. Moving into the OP of these 5 market centers created a much bigger, quote unquote, heavier world. What used to feel heavy doesn't carry the same weight with me. So there's also context. If you only have one client and you have no other clients, the weight of something going wrong in that one transaction is much different than if you had 10 clients.
It's all relative, isn't it? Because I remember when we were getting started in our first 2-3 years, and if we had a like you said, a transaction that something might be going wrong on, then that seemed like a really big deal, and that was the weight of that was huge.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Now that we're selling a lot more houses, it's not that I don't care about any of the transactions, or I care as much or more, but it's just as soon as we have employees and other agents on the team, our world has gotten bigger.
Well, we misconstrue us needing to worry and stress and give ourselves anxiety with caring. Can you care without being anxious?
Yeah, we confuse those two, don't we? It's like if you don't care, you should be worried because you care, but all that stress and anxiety, it doesn't have to go along with it.
It's a really interesting paradigm when you start to realize that if you justify your care with your emotional reactions, I don't want to live that life, and I feel bad for the people that do.
That's great.
And I don't want to make that a judgment.
No,
but it's a very difficult way to live, and it's a heavy way to live when if we need to justify me caring for somebody with me carrying the anxiety that I don't need to carry, it makes me less valuable to that person.
That's a great point. It's
like with kids, the smaller things that kids worry about, we don't worry about, so we can be much more objective with them.
I never thought about it that way. That's brilliant. That's great.
It's a really, like, we've got to catch ourselves, because the reality is I still do it. Like there's still stuff that triggers me.
For sure.
What I've gotten better at is identifying what triggers me, and then thinking about that, and then writing about it. I've had plenty of people say, thanks for writing your posts on Facebook and whatever else. What they don't realize is I'm not actually writing it for them. That's for me. Like it's my processing that seems to have brought something out for other people, but they think I'm writing it for them. It's like, no, that one's for me. I gotta go back to that one.
It's really true, isn't it? Because that Facebook kind of like stores that, and you can look back over that too when you need it.
I save it all because I need to be able to address it when I lose my mind again. It's like, I gotta get back to that. I need some form of grounding that actually puts things into perspective.
I remember somebody telling me, I think it might have been Graham Smith mentioned this one time, that we're the only creature on the planet that we know of who does this, where we worry about things that haven't happened yet and construct these fantasies in our mind. I guess our brains developed too big and too quickly or something like that. And so we have a lot of I think we have a lot of self-preservation fear, and it can be very hard to control, right? Fear is what keeps us alive in a lot of cases, right? Where we worry about what might happen. But that can really have a negative impact on your business if
Well,
you're.
what we fear matters.
Mm-hmm.
That fear was based on living or dying.
Mm-hmm.
The fears we have now are, I might not be able to have what I want for dinner.
Yeah,
Like,
for the most part, right?
What are we really worried about, right? And so everything, like you said, it's all relative, or you can contextualize everything. I think the challenge we run into is we don't slow down enough
Mm-hmm.
to actually pay attention to what unconscious thoughts just show up, and then we don't even evaluate them. So then we simply just accept them as true.
So
I think that's I think that's a problem, because it perpetuates in perpetuity. Like, it never goes away if you don't slow down enough to actually evaluate it.
Yeah, one of my coaches drilled it into me that it's really important, key, to have a time every day that you slow down and focus. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is that part of your routine or something that you recommend? Just like at the end of the day, 20 minutes or something, just to.
I don't. So I do certain things very consistently in the morning. So I'll just share my routine. I have
That'd be awesome.
a warm, big warm mug of water, and then I have a protein kale smoothie, and then I'll have my coffee. And during that time, I'll meditate, I'll journal, and then I'll put my what I call a leadership message out on social media. And it's become like, as soon as I get out of that routine, you can feel it. So, and then I rank. So I actually rank my days, and this was from Ray Dalio's book Principles. If you haven't read it, it's a deep book.
I haven't read it.
I'll forewarn you. But he talks about ranking his days on a range from 2 to -2.
Oh, I remember you mentioning this once. Yeah.
Well, I still do this. I'm in my 4th year of doing it, and each year I'll pull all the numbers together just to see how many were great days, how many were average days, how many were bad days. So you start to look at that, and so I started asking myself the question: what would make this day a 2, which is the best day you can have? And it's funny that you bring this up, because this was only about a month ago. It was, I want to spend time for at least an hour focused on something that really it seems meaningful to me. So for me, it's writing, it's self-awareness, it's personal development, it's leadership. It's something that's what works for me. Oddly enough, I think that's ultimately, it's kind of a hobby for me as well. So I think most people look directly at that as work. It is part of work, like it feeds part of work, but it doesn't actually always feel like that. So if I can get a good half hour to an hour of just very focused time, where I take my email off my computer, my do not disturb on my phone, and just turn on just some background music, that can get me in a good headspace.
So for you, you do it in the morning to kind of set up the day.
I know myself well enough that I'm not creative and thoughtful enough at the end of the day. Some people are really good at the end. Like, I know people that are very good at, like, they want to do all their reading and journaling at the end of the day at night.
Yeah.
That hasn't worked for me. I know we're all different creatures, so I'm totally good with it. For me, my creative time is in the morning. So if I don't do it in the morning, it'll be mediocre and forced at the end of the day or in the evening.
Yeah. Yeah. And you fall off the wagon sometimes too, right? You have a day where
All the time.
Yeah, and so because that's the thing that I struggle with. I'll find that I'm in a period of time where I don't know, things are humming along really well, and something will come along and trip me, and just like it could be something with my kids, or it could be some kind of a frustration, and then it just seems like it's all out the window. And I know I'm not the only one. Um,
You're not, and I just finished, Mary Beth, I think I actually recommended this book to you as well, but it's called The Surrender Experiment, Michael Singer.
oh yes, yes,
I listen to that at least once a year.
I've read his other one, the
Untethered Soul.
Untethered Soul. Yeah.
Both put things into perspective for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you really think about what types of things mess with your mindset the most, it's a contradiction to your preferences.
Mm-hmm.
So we wake up in the morning and I have a preference to have the world operate in a certain way.
Yeah.
How selfish is that? If you really think about that, I want the world to operate in a way that makes me feel comfortable. It's absurd if you think in the big context.
Yeah, you get up and you think the day's going to go like this, and it's all going to come to me the way I expect it to.
And it won't ever.
And then if it does, it doesn't. I'm frustrated, angry, disappointed.
You nailed it. And now it tailspins into a victim of why doesn't anything work out in my favor? Why aren't things going my way?
Yeah.
What if you flipped your preferences into, the world's showing me a different thing right now that I got to accept as reality, because whatever is like right now, the reality is you're all on this call. Mm-hmm. That's the reality. Some of you may not want to be, I don't know. But the reality is if you have a deal going sideways, does your resistance to that reality change the reality of the situation?
Right.
Your resistance doesn't change any of it. So why would you want to perpetuate your resistance to something that's already happening?
Yeah, it sounds absurd when we just lay it all out on the table.
And do we all still catch ourselves like this is the reality of being human? Like, yep, still going to be upset about things. Mm-hmm. And the sooner I accept them 100%, the faster I'm able to move on. Mm-hmm. The sooner I get over somebody saying something about me, the faster I can move on.
Would you call that it? Mm-hmm. Sorry.
The sooner any situation, the sooner my child does something that I completely disagree with, mm-hmm. the faster I can move on. And the second part of that is the quicker I can have more empathy for how they think or what they did, or be more curious around the decision that they made.
Would you call that emotional recovery? Is that similar?
I guess emotional recovery.
Well, like I know that, let me give you an example. If you have a client who's upset with you, and something went wrong in the transaction, it used to trip me up for a week. I'd be like, someone's upset with me and I feel so bad. And now, then it went down to a couple days, and then I'm okay, I'm over it, or we figured it out. And then it went down to, it tripped me up for a day, and now it would probably not bother me for an hour.
That's good.
I'm
if
tough.
You can do that. I give you credit, because
maybe a little more than an hour. It depends on.
Well, I think it depends, right?
It doesn't happen often.
but the idea, Andy, is you're aware of it.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of people aren't even aware of how long they allow it to stick with them. Mm-hmm. They're aware of it because they're feeling it, but they're not accepting it as, okay, now what am I going to do with this? Now what do I do? Because this is the situation at hand. So it puts you more on the offense versus sitting back in the defense wishing things were different.
Mm-hmm. It makes so much sense. So the sooner you can accept reality and move on without it tripping up your whole sense of well-being.
And if you can accept it, I'm speaking of Facebook and they bring stuff up. The Leadership Academy I did in 2019, The caption on the video that I had was "Run to the pain." So I'm not even going to say it's a positive attribute. It's an attribute that I actually am aware of, is if I have something that's still undone, that it's still bothering me. So if somebody's upset or a situation isn't right, and it's still bothering me, my job at that point is to run after it. Is to do everything that I can to either have the different, because I will sit and stir and I will not sleep. If there's a difficult conversation that I need to have, I'm going to have it. And sometimes this isn't the best thing. Sometimes you need to let things sit. And it's also backfired, because I've gone to the situation where emotionally they were not in the place where they wanted to have the conversation, but I was too anxious about it that I wasn't willing to wait. That doesn't always work either, right? So I think there needs to be an agreement on, hey, this is really bothering me, or you're going to have a conversation.
There has not been a single time in my life when I did that, just picked up the phone, had the conversation, whatever it was, that I didn't feel better. Even if it wasn't all fixed, I always felt better.
You did everything you could.
Felt like I went to church, you know? I mean, it's like,
there's something to be said about, okay, I've done my part, and I can't, that person is going to feel what they're going to feel, and they have every right to feel that way. Like, me thinking they shouldn't feel that way doesn't make them wrong. It actually makes me look more immature.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, when we started talking, I find a lot of the time it's not as bad as I thought. A seller wanted to meet me at the office recently to discuss why the house wasn't selling, and the price was too high. And I kind of half thought I was going to get fired. But then when they came in, it was completely cordial, just nice conversation. It was no problem. And we all got down to it, and there was no issue. But for about 3 days, I was worrying that they're mad at me, I was going to get yelled at.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it goes back to the initial part of creating the stories.
Yeah.
I get the same thing, Andy. The text that I hate the most, I feel odd saying this, knowing that, is, hey, can we meet?
Right. Right.
That's the only thing they text me, is, hey, can we meet? I'm like, I know this text. I know this one. I don't like it. But now it's a matter of, go ahead, Nora.
Well, I was just going to say, the one piece of advice, if you're ever sending that to somebody, say good thing or bad, like something to discuss. If you say good thing, then people worry a lot less. So if you ever need to talk about something that's not scary, be kind to the other person and say good thing.
It's a super valid point. And I still say, okay, majority of the things in the text that I get are good. Yeah. So it's interesting when I get that text, my first reaction is to go negative. Right? Yeah. So I'm still suggesting, what would cause me to just look at every text as, oh, maybe they just want to talk about something.
I think that has something to do with the fear of the unknown.
Yeah, that's a real, we as a society have a hard time with that, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way that they worded that, hey, can we talk? There's a lot of unanswered questions in just that small sentence. Yeah. And so that's where I'm like, yeah, it's the fear of the unknown. We don't know if it's good. We don't know if it's bad. And then our mind starts running, like we were talking about at the beginning of the meeting here. So
totally. Yeah.
Can I ask you about real estate agents for a sec, just to kind of see if there's anything specific that might help us in our businesses? What do you see agents struggling with the most? You have so many agents in your world, overseeing 5 market centers. What do you see agents, like within this context of mindset, people who would like to have more sales, they're not feeling like their business is going where they want it to go. How do you approach those conversations?
I always want to get to the root.
Okay.
Because there's two different ways to, let's just say, coach. One is you coach to the whole person. So you ask the questions that help people identify. I actually think there's a lot of, and this isn't a negative statement. I think it's what we've been through over the past, I would say 3 to 5 years, and probably even for the real estate world, even 10 years for how good the market's been, as long as it has. We've lost sight of why we enjoy what we do or what we're actually doing it for. Because it's been good, it's been great, it's been busy. All of that stuff doesn't require us to sit inside here, because we can keep busy enough with the other stuff that we can deflect any meaningful thoughts that maybe there's some pain, or I don't know if I want to do this anymore. The money has offset the reason behind doing it. And so we're coming to a reckoning right now of, Mary Beth, I know you've been in the business through multiple of these, Kimbra, I think as well. When a market shifts, everybody's got to shift their perspective around what it actually takes to do the same level of business or grow or do it differently. So if we don't have our core reasoning behind what we do, the most common statement that I get from agents is, I love helping people. I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
What's the problem with that? Wanting to help people doesn't get you business.
It doesn't necessarily equate to a sustainable business.
It can help, but there's a component of business that we have to go find more people to help. And if we're not willing to do the work to go to find them, because is there discomfort with that? Yeah, there's rejection that comes along with it. 100%, I get that. But if you know why you're doing it, and then that why is big enough for you to get over the rejection, you'll go do the work. But if you don't know why you're doing it, the chances of you doing it enough or consistent, we know, everybody on this call knows, this is a consistency game in perpetuity. The most consistent people, if you could do 5 calls a day, every day, you'll run a strong business. It's going to take some time if that's what you're doing, is 5 a day. But if you've been in business long enough, that will absolutely sustain a good business for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
But if you're inconsistent, I did it that way. I sold for 11 years and I was inconsistent about 9 of them. so you're looking for somebody that knows what not to do. That is me, because it was not. That's where, I made it through the shift from 2006-07 until about 2011 when I started. So right when it started to uptick, that's when I moved into leadership. But what happened is I had some of my best months in those down years, and I didn't get the fulfillment that I got 3, 4, 5 years before, which required me to get honest, like, what am I really doing? And am I willing to do this forever? Is there something else that would fulfill me different?
Keeping that big why in mind.
I've actually, in full transparency, I've tried to get away from the big why, because we get so used to words that I would much rather use words that actually land with somebody than just the same word we've always used. So it's not even a word for me anymore. It's like, what are you doing this for?
Right. Understood. Kimbra has her hand up.
Yeah. Hey there. Yeah, I've been through different things, that's for sure. And I think one of the mindsets that we have in a shifting market is not coming from a mindset of scarcity, to come through a mindset of abundance. And we've talked about that a lot in a lot of different meetings. And then also just getting up and looking at this business through the eyes of when you first looked at it, how excited you were. You know, we, instead of looking at it as a challenge and understand, you know, trying to get through the day, is that first excitement that you got into the business, and that first excitement that really, when you help those first clients, to remember that, to bring that to the top of the forefront of why you're in this business, and instead of looking at through the eyes of scarcity, but abundance.
Love that.
I love that.
I think that's great, Kimbra.
Yeah. Well, we were going to keep this to about half an hour, and it's 1:30. Anything else that we want to touch on, or that was really important? Of course, we could talk a lot longer for sure.
I scheduled till 1:45, and so that's what was on my calendar. So that's what I ran with. So I'm fine with whatever you guys choose. You told me not to prepare,
yes,
because you didn't want anything canned. So that's what I did.
Well, I like to keep a little time if there's Q&A too. So
I got a question, Jake,
yeah.
that can help us with. If you had to give, what piece of advice, like what actionable steps do you give to people to make sure they're in the right mindset, or that they can take to improve their mindset? Like if
That's
someone's like, oh, I need a, what do you get? What would you suggest?
What I was going to ask too. Thank you, Nora.
I can speak to me. I can speak to the challenges that cause my mindset to go south, and it's not going to be what everybody wants to hear, but my morning starts the night before. So whether it's alcohol or staying up late or whatever it is, that will, no matter what I think, that's going to affect my thoughts or my sleep the next day. And I figured a fair amount of it out, but I was surviving on very little sleep for about 15 to 20 years. And I didn't even realize it until I was able to start getting sleep just 6, 7, 8 months ago. And you don't realize how you're operating until you're outside of that funk. It was really like, wow, I look back and it was about 4 hours a night is essentially what I was surviving on. And so you can understand that I used every ounce of energy that I possibly could bring to the table to be positive outward to everybody else. And as soon as I got home, I crashed. Like I had nothing in the tank. So I start with exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And then I think it's important to filter in, what are you watching? What are you listening to? You know what drives me nuts? This happened yesterday. So go to the gym and there's 5 TVs on, and 3 of them are Fox News and 2 of them are CNN. And I'm thinking, what the hell are we doing here? Like,
amen. Right?
It's a complete I go change it every time, and you can tell the ones that want to watch Fox News or CNN. You can tell. And I'm like, I can't look at this. I feel awful on just running on the treadmill, just looking at this.
I've got a Planet Fitness membership, and I almost never go in there because there's 40 TVs up there that are all playing this stuff. The last time I was in there, I had to stare at a documentary on the wide world of wrestling or something from the 90s. And I was like, I'm just trying to,
it's not that I even watch it that often. All I got to see is the headlines.
Right.
And that's enough, where I'm always listening to either a book or a podcast. So I think what you're listening to, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, can dramatically impact the direction, whether you spiral upwards or spiral downwards. And that includes social media and the people that show up on your feed. I blocked more people this year than I blocked in my whole time on social media. And it's because people got shitty attitudes.
Yeah, I know. I unfollow people. I only block people if I've really got to.
Yeah, that's what I meant. They just don't show up on my feed anymore.
Right.
Unless there was one person that was kind of immature. I was like, you're never going to be able to see anything I ever post again.
Yeah.
so I'm a little childish too. Like, I got feelings.
Well, we all do. Can we talk about social media and media in general too? Because I like to be an informed citizen, but I find when I look at the news too much, it definitely affects my mindset. And then I feel like I'm thinking about that instead of thinking about, honestly, it's a way outsized to how much brain power I'm putting into what Trump did or what Biden did or whatever to my kids, my business, my wife, you know, people who need me right here and now. But I kind of like to know what's going on too. I mean, I don't believe in being an ostrich.
Right.
But do you throttle it back and forth? Do you struggle with that? Do you get the weekly recap and or you just ignore it?
Well, here's the reality.
And I don't mean to
go into political. If it's a big enough thing, I'm going to find out about it.
Well, that's true.
But if I think of all the stuff that's going on in the world, I don't know 99.9% of it. So me not knowing actually doesn't change any of it.
That's right. It doesn't change any of it.
If there's something big enough, it's going to find me. And if it's something that I need to look into, then I'll inform myself. But most of the stuff has nothing to do with me.
Right.
And there's nothing I can do about it. So if I can do something about it, I will. If I can't, then I'm not going to put myself in that position over and over and over when it's just something that doesn't serve me.
So I think the people with shitty mindsets often are they're in a mental prison of sorts.
No question.
Right. And the things that they're usually upset about are generally things that, like you said, they have no control over. And they're just going through life venting all the time.
But we have to, I think we can be empathetic to those people too, because understand that that's feeding their brain, they're getting endorphins off of it. Yeah. So there is an addiction to that too. So I'm also empathetic to that as well. So I think, and Jen Briggs brought this up when we were talking about our kids, people bring statements to us as fact. But if we stop for a second and we would say, do you think that or do you know that? You'd be shocked on how many people just think it and don't know it.
That is a great point.
So if they want to keep bringing stuff to me, I'm going to keep asking the question, do you think that or do you know that? Yeah. Because if you don't know, I'm not interested in talking about it. Because what it turns into is an emotional conversation that actually doesn't make any progress. Now, if we want to dive deep into the facts of the situation, I am all on board for that. But until that happens, I'm not interested. Yeah, it's so true. One of the things I encourage people to do with social media, agents to do, is to use it to be more of a creator too than a consumer. So I try to go through and do the quick consume, like, because it's fun to know what's going on with our clients and friends and family and whatever. Right. But I think if you turn it on every day and just, you know, get obsessed by the feed, and then if you especially have a lot of people in your feed who are ranting and negative and bad mindset, then you can it's like it's like garbage in, garbage out, right? Then you start feeling you can go find whatever you're looking for. When you wake up in the morning, if you're looking for something, you can go find it. Yeah. So whatever you're seeing is what you're actually looking for. The unfortunate thing is we're not conscious a lot of times of what we're actually looking for. So we just assume that the world is a certain way because that's what we're geared to look for.
Oh, it's so true. And if you look at my social media right now, it's a great place because I've unfollowed almost everybody who puts up political rants and negativity and whatever.
So I can't go post something on your post now?
Oh well,
dang it!
all I get is you and Tristan and Nora and and Rena.
I'm sorry about me. That I'll work on that.
Oh my God. Does anyone else have any thoughts, questions, whatever? This is always a free discussion, open discussion, but I wanted to just throw it out there.
Lisa has to say something.
Come on, Lisa, you got something.
Well, hi. I do have something to say because, well, not because, but I wrote down, you were talking about basically we're ruminating, right? We're ruminating, we're creating these stories and so forth. And a book that changed my life, I think it was a therapist who referred it or recommended it to me. It's Dale Carnegie's How to Stop Living and Start, or How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Have you read that book? I'm
I
assuming
have not, no.
I have
You
not either. I'm going to read it now.
okay, this is I Barnes and Noble and bought it, and it has changed my life.
Interesting.
Probably one of the most important books that I read, because we all worry about whatever. I've got issues taking care of my mother and my father right now, and I could either go down that frickin' rabbit hole and ruminate about all the shit that isn't happening, or not, and I choose not to.
Or just take the moments that you have, right? Like, it
Yeah.
sounds very facetious and cliche, but the reality is, like, that's the situation you're in, and so how you want to process it does make a big impact.
It does, and I have a coach. I have a one-on-one coach, and some things are personally with my mom, and my siblings said, "Oh, well, this is our life now." And my response to that after a day of processing was, "Okay, this is my life now. I can accept that. Now, how do I live my life the way I want to live my life?" And it's all about choices.
It's a great, it's not easy, and that moves you away further than the opposite of that.
Yeah, it is not easy, but it's about doing those things that you talk about: journaling, meditating, doing all of that kind of stuff.
For sure. Yeah, you need to find that quiet space to get grounded as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Jake, when you journal in the morning, how do you reflect on the day before?
Sometimes
But it would be a different thought process than or doesn't that change that much from what you had in the morning to what you're journaling at night versus journaling in the morning?
It's something that I've thought about, and I don't, for me, that a little bit of space allows me to evaluate it a little bit more objectively.
Okay.
Than just, if I'm still upset the next day, I'll have there'll be the same conversation, but sometimes a little bit of space gives me some perspective. And if what I've learned about my writing is it's most productive when things are tough.
Mm-hmm.
I think when things are challenging, that's when my journaling actually, the true wisdom comes out of.
Mhm.
Pain is a driver of wisdom, in my opinion. And I want to differentiate, like, there's pain and then there's suffering, and there is a difference between the two. Suffering is, there's not anybody on this call that is going to be able to live their life without any pain. Pain is with relationships, with people, with challenges, with health. Like, there's going to be a certain amount of pain that shows up. Suffering is continuing to replay that pain over and over and over after the event is done.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next day is, okay, I'm going to, like, yesterday was a super tough day. I honestly, last night I was thinking, why are they having me on for mindset when I'm having a day like this? I had that very honest thought.
I was thinking the same thing. I had a terrible day yesterday.
It was I just did everything I had to do, and I did it begrudgingly.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it with as much joy as I wanted to. I didn't do it with any gratitude. And you start to realize, like, okay, there's give myself some compassion, some grace. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to show up the next day, and so Kimbra, I ranked my day yesterday as a -2.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that this morning, and I typically use a handful of words just that I write on the calendar. So when I can go back and evaluate what caused it to be a -2, there's typically a pattern. And I don't have many of those, less than a dozen a year. And that was one of them. But if you look at it, anxiety is the main word that shows up on -2 ranked days.
Mm-hmm.
You just said something that I've heard you say before that I don't want to miss, because you mentioned patterns. looking for patterns in your life. And what I'm hearing is the main thing isn't, the most important thing here isn't that you had a crappy day yesterday. It's that you're aware of it and you're seeing the pattern. And I think that's pretty cool.
There's no question. And is there anything that's causing it? Like, can I identify anything that I'm doing in my world that's hurting my ability to have the right mindset? And it's not, sometimes you're just going to have a bad day and you're not going to be able to pinpoint it, but other times you'll be able to identify patterns of your thinking. What I actually learned in that ranking is most times the ranking had very little to do with the events themselves. The ranking had to do more about my approach to the day. So I've ranked really, really tough days as 2 because how I reacted to the challenges that I faced. It didn't mean that the day was awesome because all the external things lined up perfectly. It mean that my mind and my commitment to have a great day, even with everything falling apart, was strong enough that I was able to, and it also doesn't mean I was super happy. It just means that I showed up with the strength to do the best that I could that day.
So the -2 + 2 is almost a self-assessment in a way, rather than, oh, I got 2 offers accepted and I was so happy and whatever.
Sometimes it is events. Like my Leadership Academy days are typically 2s. And I'm still trying to work through that because I want to make sure that they're not ranked 2s because of what I feel or what I get out of it.
Okay.
But I do believe that's part of it. The other part is I think I'm actually doing what I am supposed to be doing. And that alignment of purpose is much easier to make it a 2, even when things are going haywire, than doing something that isn't serving my purpose and is just, it's not very impactful or meaningful. It can still be a good day, but it's driven by things that can change on a whim, not anything that I'm actually doing.
Well, it makes so much sense because the toughest days are the ones where you often grow and learn the most and have the most.
But you know just as well as I do, you can go into days and when you're having a bad day, the last thing you want somebody to tell you is, come on, what do you need from this? Or what look at it as a positive. And you're like, shut up, I don't want to hear that right now. So you've got to meet people but sometimes they need that, right? Sometimes it's like, okay, what are you going to do about this? Because this is the 3rd time you've brought the same thing to me and you haven't done anything about it. Now there's time for me to, like, do you want my help? The flip side to that is sometimes people just want you to listen and you got to be there to support them. Let them be in that place and don't try to fix it or put a positive spin on it. Like telling an anxious person not to be anxious doesn't help them. Telling an anxious person to be grateful doesn't help them. We've got to meet them in a place like, help me understand your processing. Like, what's your perspective of this? And if you shifted it, how would you shift it? And you get to allow them to self-discover versus you trying to fix. We don't fix people. We give ideas for people to fix themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
because
none of us are strong enough to fix anybody. They have to do the work themselves. We just got to be there alongside of them to bring them along on the ride.
Yeah. Sometimes I've had agents come back to me with the same business problem over and over again. It never seems to go away. And no matter how we approach it, and they always want me to listen to the same thing. And I'm happy to listen, but sometimes I don't know if I'm being as helpful as I could.
Well, that's where we get to stop for a second, Andy, and ask questions like, you just want me to listen. It's the conversation. I learned this, my wife and I, she taught me this lesson. Like, sometimes I'm telling you stuff. I don't want you to fix anything. I just want you to listen.
Yeah.
I don't want a solution from you. Don't tell me all your solutions. I just want you to hear me.
Yeah.
And I thought, I think a lot of people are just, they want to go fix stuff.
Well, it only took me 20 years in marriage to finally figure that out. Sometimes I just needed to listen because I'm like, well, I know exactly what to do about that. All we need to do is she's like, well, you just shut up.
That's not what I'm asking for.
Well, should we wrap it up here?
Yeah, I think
Thank
we're good.
Thank you so much. I genuinely, I'm not being nice. I got so much out of this, and
I appreciate that.
it helped
Very
me.
kind. I appreciate
Helps me a
that.
lot.
Cool.
Just to know that I'm not alone too. I'm not the only one who has
We're all in this
2
together.
days.
We're all in this together. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Jake.
Thank
Appreciate
you all.
you. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.